TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Terry Allen, Magnum, had the car crash.
Right.
And this was after, I'd thrown the fit and left Vince and went home. I worked back for Florida. It was tough times for that little Florida territory because there was nobody there. That was when I was working with Luger and Bob Roop. And really,
Right.
I can't think of anybody else. I think maybe Muda might have been first training right around that time. So I worked with Muda a little bit there. Because Muda, had been in the dojo in Japan. So that was the first times I'd been around Muda. But Terry Allen had his car crash, which knocked him out of commission. He's lucky to be here. But Terry and I were real close friends. He was one of those guys, that when I went and bought the Porsche, of course, I was one of the first guys that had a cell phone in my car. So it was a box about this big up in the front hood, and then it had the phone part where you answer here. Right. So he'd call me on my cell phone all the time. So we're talking to each other, cell phone, 1986, 87. Yeah, it was 86 when Terry had his crash. Yeah, so there I was with the cell phone, before that, one of the first guys to have one. So that's how I communicated with everybody. It's, where are you? I'm driving down the road in my car. Right. So it was just crazy stuff. But Terry couldn't talk. He couldn't speak because they had to do a tracheotomy on him. And they had him, because of the spinal injury, they had him face down. And I heard the next morning, that he had the crash. I jumped in my car. It's 600 miles. Yeah, it's 600 miles from Tampa, where I was living, to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in the wind. I had to get there and see him. Because a terrible crash. It was.
You didn't know.
It changed his life. And word was, we thought that he was going to die. He was being kept alive. But I got there. And, I could read it in his eyes. He smiled.
Right. He
couldn't believe. I got to take a second. Man, he's a tough guy. But he was the one that convinced Dusty, after I'd run off after the $135 checks. I'd been gone for a few years, and I don't know how they communicated, but, Terry more or less begged Dusty, said, have Barry come back. He's the, he was your guy before, have him come back. Dusty didn't really want me around, because I'd left him before. He'd kind of built that Crockett company, kind of around me there for a while. And then, $135, you got to go somewhere else.
Right.
You can't even buy hamburgers, to live for a week on that kind of money. But Terry Allen, convinced him to have me come back. And Dusty and Jimmy Crockett, they were real tentative about it. When I came back, Dusty called me and he said, I'm only doing this for one reason. It's because Terry wants you.
So they brought you in, and you actually first teamed with Ron Garvin, I believe, at the time, and feuded with the call-offs.
Yeah. So what he did, he didn't put me right there, in that spot, right by his side, and right in Terry Allen's position, where he was, where Magnum TA, was or had been before his car wreck. But, he kind of felt me out,
right.
Didn't know if I was, flighty, because I'd left him and I'd left Vince. I guess I had, a reputation of just, if I don't like it, I'm leaving. So You know, I came back and I tagged with Ronnie Garvin, and I believe we won the
U.S.
The U.S. Tag Championships together. You know, so Dusty had, you know, that much confidence in me by that time. And then it got to where, you know, that area that Crockett was promoting at that time, you know, from I don't know that I know that they did. They went up to the Meadowlands, you know, so they were doing big business. So after Dusty had felt me out, you know, and got the confidence, then he kind of started getting me back in that position, you know, to where he wanted me to be. But working with Ronnie Garvin, you know, it was a fun time. You know, there was a time there with the Crockett's with the, you know, we had private jets and private planes. It was like it was a 5-year party. You know, it was pretty crazy.
What was it like to work with the Midnight Express?
Bobby Eaton is probably one of the best workers in the business. I mean, he can do anything and still right now come right in here and do, you know, the stuff that he's always been doing. And Bobby Eaton is one of those guys that you just can't help but like. And let's see, the Midnight Express. Let's see, I think originally it was what, Dennis Condrey? Yeah, Condrey. Dennis Condrey was a really good worker too. So I mean, there were guys, you know, like I said, it was still in that time, you know, where you didn't sit, you know, in a dressing room and try to figure out a match with each other. You know, okay, how are we going to do this? Okay, got to remember this. We're going to do this, do this, do this. You know, those times weren't around yet. So I mean, we worked with those guys, and it's just, you know, it clicked. You know, and we had good times and we had good matches. So
TitleMatchNetwork.com